The Chicago Bulls head coaching search is heating up, and there is a name that we thought was going to be on the finalist list. He may not be on there, and that is Chris Quinn. We're going to reveal the names, according to Mark Stein, that are moving on to the next phase for your Chicago Bulls head coaching search. And then to finish today's episode, we're going to talk about if the Chicago Bulls are signaling their draft plans with some of the latest news and rumors that we've heard. Y'all know we're going to talk about it, break it all down, but you got to hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Boys podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in like talking Bulls basketball, make sure you go ahead and do the simple two-step process and support the channel on our road to 2K, 10K, excuse me. I'm selling myself short, but that is simply by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, and make sure you comment on today's topic. But the biggest thing, let's get into it, man. We are hearing that there is no sight of Chris Quinn being mentioned as one of the finalists moving on to the final phase of the Chicago Bulls head coaching search, with the Chicago Bulls now moving on to in-person interviews. According to Mark Stein of the Stein Line, he says the Bulls, league sources say, have begun bringing select candidates to Chicago for in-person interviews this week, following the team's array of virtual meetings in search of the successor of Billy Donovan as head coach. The list of names that he mentioned: Trailblazers acting coach Tiago Splitter, Hawks assistant coach Ryan Schmidt, and Timberwolves assistant Micah Nori. They also mentioned that Wes Unseld Jr. is still in that too. Ugh. I don't know why. But the biggest question I got to ask is, why was there no mention of Chris Quinn in the head coaching search? And what it kind of looks like is that Chris Quinn probably didn't fit or meet the criteria that the Chicago Bulls had in place for their next head coach. I thought that Chris Quinn came in with a really solid resume. I wouldn't say it was one of the best resumes, considering that Eric Spoelstra has been running the Miami Heat for a very long time. And we know that that ship or that train or that vehicle is being driven by Eric Spoelstra. So you kind of understand it to a degree, but one will think that a guy like Chris Quinn, in a way that he's worked his way through the Miami Heat basketball team, would have, or at least would have, made it to the finalist list. But I'm not mad at the finalist list that we have. With Tiago Splitter, I had him originally at the top of my list, and then Micah Nori followed after. And one of those reasons why I have those two guys at the top is not only are they assistants, and I think they're really good assistants, those guys have proof of concept. Tiago Splitter just went through an 82-game season plus a playoff series in the thick of commotion, in the thick of just turmoil and disastrous stuff that started off the season for the Portland Trailblazers. So hearing that Tiago Splitter has moved on to the finalist round, or at least that in-person interview phase, I'm really excited about that. The same can be said about Micah Nori as well, simply because he's been the assistant to, Chris Finch down over there in Minnesota, and Micah Nori has filled in place of Chris Finch's absence and help the Minnesota Timberwolves win a playoff series versus the Denver Nuggets. I think that holds a lot of weight in my personal opinion, and I really like that. I'm gonna be honest with you, when it comes to the Hawks assistant Ryan Schmidt, I'm really not that surprised that he's moving on to this finalist round or this quote unquote next phase. When we brought him up over here on Shy Bulls podcast, I definitely mentioned him being around a guy like Bryson Graham. Bryson Graham has that familiarity with a guy like Ryan Schmidt. So it was kind of, something that I tried to correlate between the two and bring that over and saying, hey, I understand why he's interviewing a guy like that. and Wes Unseld Jr. Look, y'all know why I stand with that. That's something I'm not really trying to tap into. Me personally, I think this is just something that the Chicago Bulls are really just trying to give him a chance, courtesy of Michael Reinsdorf and Billy Donovan, because how the ownership view Billy Donovan, and probably how Billy Donovan could have potentially endorsed a guy like Wes Unseld. Me personally, I don't want him as my coach. It's no shot to him. I don't think his time with Washington was that impressive, but I understand that he has some experience as the lead dog. Maybe he can change and right in the ship. It's just something I'm not wanting to get into as of right now. So currently, as it stands, right now, the Chicago Bulls, we have seen names like Dave Bliss, who's not on this list. We just mentioned names like Chris Quinn, who's not on this list. We know that the Bulls really held Sean Sweeney in high regard. He took the Magic job. So that's leave us with 4 guys moving on to the in-person interviews. And me personally, I don't know where they're gonna go with this, and I'll be shocked if they go. You know, I would let me make a correction. I would not be shocked if we see Ryan Smith as the next head coach, and this is why. Bryson Graham has hired guys that he's familiar with and, and can quote unquote trust up until this point. Bringing in AC Law, a guy that you play basketball with, a guy that you've had close relationships with up until this point. Boom. Same thing can be said about Steven Mervis as well. Guys that you trust, guys that you bring in, guys that you work with, or guys that you know around the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Schmidt or is being held in a high regard. I honestly will be all right with it, I guess. I think at the end of the day, whoever they choose to hire, as long as it's not Wes Unseld, I think that the Chicago Bulls will still have to show us more than what they tell us. Obviously, we like these names that's on this in this next phase of interviews. I love Micah Nori, I love Tiago Splitter and Ryan Schmidt as candidates. And we'll see where Bryson Graham best sees fit for the Chicago Bulls. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to what does the product look like on the basketball court? How do these guys get the best out of their talent? How do you develop these young guys? And what can you do to ensure that the Chicago Bulls are moving in the right direction? I'm not going to count anybody out because it's obviously not my process, but I'm still going to have just the top 3 guys as the best candidates over Wes Unseld Jr. Is no slight to him as a person, as a man. I don't know him. It's just that I want something fresh. I would like something new. And I would like to move on from anything Billy Donovan, Arturas Karnisovas, Mark Eversley related. We all would love to see the Reinsdorf sleeves, but guess what? They're not going anywhere. So while we're dealing with them, let's start over with something fresh, keep it clean, and let's move on to carve out our own path. And there's even some rumblings that if a head coach is selected, that Wes Unseld Jr. could potentially stick around as an assistant. I don't even like that either. I would like for the new head coach to come in and bring in his own guys who can see fit, who they trust, who they can lean on, and pretty much mold this thing into something that we can hopefully start to see some success with. That's how I feel about it. Those news came from Mark Steins of the Steinline Substack. So if you want to check it out, you do have to subscribe. But there are some ways that you can go ahead and get the news because there are multiple people breaking those news. Check it out. But let me know how y'all feeling about Chris Quinn not being mentioned in the head coaching search as a finalist moving on for the in-person interviews. I thought he was going to be there, but he's not there. So y'all let me know how y'all feeling about that. And y'all let me know how y'all feeling about Tiago Splitter, Ryan Schmidt, and Micah Nori, along with Wes Unseld Jr. being finalists for in-person interviews. Y'all let me know down below. Now I want to move on to the last topic of today's episode and talk about if the Chicago Bulls are signaling or giving us a little insight into their draft plans. Follow me. The reason I'm asking this question is because the Chicago Bulls, as of right now, have held, at least to what's confirmed, 19 workouts. Out of those 19 workouts, the Chicago Bulls have brought in 12 guards. that is either point guards or shooting guards. And most recently, they brought in Chris Sanak Jr. And that's a big guy that can go out there and definitely hoop, give you a lot of good things on the basketball court. And there, you're seeing a lot of different things. And to me, it's just the Chicago Bulls doing due diligence. But in your opinion, are they signaling something like, hey, we're going to take maybe a power forward and a guard? Maybe we're going to take two bigs. Maybe we're going to take two forwards. How do you view the whole process up into this point? Do you think it's just simply due diligence, or do you think there's some type of insight going on here with the Chicago Bulls? Do you feel that the Chicago Bulls are considering what they already have on the squad more so than what we think? Because we understood Bryson Graham when he said that no player is untouchable, but there still has to be some consideration, right? Some consideration into what you already have in Montes Buzelis, Josh Giddey, Leonard Miller, and so on and so forth. There still should be some consideration in that, right? So that's why I'm trying to just pretty much trying to pinpoint it down, see where the Chicago Bulls are at. And then there's, some rumblings around there, some rumors that the Chicago Bulls could potentially be in play, for Darren Peterson. The Chicago Bulls could potentially be trading back into the top 10. I think that all of this is just signaling due diligence. That's just me. The reason I think that it's just due diligence, to be quite frank with you, is simply because I believe that the Chicago Bulls, you don't know how this draft is going to go. We already hearing rumors. Now there's a new rumor on the mill that the Utah Jazz at 2 could potentially skip over Darren Peterson and draft Cam Boozer. It's rumors. You take it for what you will. But then if that does happen, and let's say the Memphis Grizzlies, they don't want Darren Peterson, and he falls to the Chicago Bulls, now what if you're the Chicago Bulls do? You obviously, at least in my mind, the obvious selection is to go and get Darren Peterson, right? So then now once you hit 15, now do you still look into getting back into that top 10? Or do you just stand pat and say, hey, let Morez Johnson fall to us. Let Steinbach fall to us. Let Sanak fall to us. Or if it's on the other side with the consensus of how it's all going to play out, you draft Caleb Wilson at 4, and then you have your options based on the trade demand that you've already done your due diligence about. You called around, seeing how much it'll cost to move from 15 to whatever spot. Do you now take into consideration, now that you have Caleb Wilson, now let me go get one of these young guards that I'm really, really interested in that we just talked about yesterday, in Michael Brown Jr. and Kingston Flemings and Keaton Wagler. Now let me go and move and grab one of those guys who may be falling a little bit in this draft. So all in all, I think that it could be some signaling to their draft plans, but ultimately I think that it's just simply doing your damn job, doing your due diligence, and really being proactive in this search to better the Chicago Bulls. It's the same thing with the head coaching search. You had a long list. Now apparently the list has been cut to now in-person interviews. Hopefully we'll find out a decision with that. And then now you're looking at as many prospects as possible, just in case, hey, we pick at 4, we pick at 15, and somebody slides past 15, and it's one of those teams between 15 and 30, they want to move off said guy. Now maybe we can trade back into the latter part of the draft instead of trading from 15 into the top 5 through 10 spots. So I think all in all, I think it's just due diligence. If you feel something differently, let me know down below. Then I'm open to all opinions and discussions as long as they're not outlandish and crazy. Because sometimes a lot of us, we 2K players, we like to think that this is going to be a 2K type of draft. You know what I'm saying? To where we could just move off of P. Will and add a second round pick and get a first round. I don't think it's going to work like that at all. But I think that ultimately this is just the Chicago Bulls doing their job. You're looking at all the players that you could possibly look at, see if one of them may become available to where you can either trade for them or you can wait it out for them or something like that. That's my mindset. That's how I'm looking at it. But obviously, your opinion matters as well. And it could be different. And I'm open to listening to that as well. But hey, with 12 guards worked out of 19 players, and with the possibility of us knowing that we could potentially be getting Caleb Wilson at 4, I think that's what if we're going to go out on a limb and take a shot and say, hey, this is what they're probably going to do. I think that's kind of how it's shaping out to be, personally. But sometimes you never know how the board is going to fall. We don't know how other teams feel about said players in the lottery. We don't know if teams are very, very high enough to go get Acuff at 5. We don't know if somebody is looking at Keaton Wagler more so than Acuff. We don't know if teams are going to say, you know what, this is a big man's league. Instead of let me go on and get Acuff, let me go get Ade Mara. So it's they're doing their due diligence. That's my belief. You let me know your belief down below. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode. Before you get up out of here, make sure you support the channel on the road to 10K. We're just there. We're not too far away. We will get there any day now. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well, man. We appreciate y'all. Make sure you always see red. Y'all already know we're going to catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace.
Cognac. Gang.